Thank you. Thanks, Harry. Hi, everybody. My name's Natalia Lawrence. I'm an Associate Professor in Psychology, and I work on dietary behaviour change interventions to help people eat healthier and more sustainable diets. So I think we're probably all on board with the university's vision for a greener, healthier and fairer society. And I think we're probably also all in agreement that changing people's diets is really critical to achieving that. So we know, for example, that reducing meat and dairy can have huge impacts on the environment. Poor death is now one of, if not the leading cause of premature mortality worldwide. And inequalities and access to healthy, nutritious diets is a big problem both in the UK and obviously worldwide. And if we look at the health and the environmental impacts of food or diets balanced against one another, perhaps quite fortuitously, there seems to be a correlation in that the foods that are very good for the environment, such as fruits and vegetables, tend to be the ones that reduce your risk of mortality. And some of the foods that have the highest environmental impacts, particularly red meat, actually increase your risk of premature mortality. And there's a number of other notable health impacts of reducing meat and switching to a more whole foods, plant-based diet on the right. So as psychologists, we study the drivers of people's food choices and eating behaviour, and we like to think of ourselves as rational beings, weighing up all these various important factors. But it's been estimated that we make over 220 decisions about food every day, like what to eat, when to eat, how much, where to get it from, and so on. And it's basically impossible for us to be making rational choices all the time in our busy lives. So unfortunately, most of our food choices are driven by automatic rapid acting processes such as habit and preferences. And lots of people argue, well, maybe we can kind of just give people information and educate them to help them make the right choices. But this is an example. The 5 a Day campaign's been going for 20 years, government backed, and 99% of adults in the UK are familiar with it. But only 25% of us actually eat 5 a day, and even less children, 15%. And our diets in the UK are pretty atrocious. We don't eat enough fibre. We nearly all eat too much sugar, and the majority of us also eat too much fat. So yeah, health is not a big priority for many of us when we're choosing foods to eat. So what can we do to change our eating behaviour? So the most effective way is to change the food environment, the foods that are available, the pricing and so on. But politically, that's very difficult to achieve, to kind of force everyone to eat healthy and sustainable foods. So as psychologists, we like to think of everyone as a giant Pavlov's dog. And so we look a lot at stimuli in the environment and how they can trigger our eating behaviour. So you might be planning to eat a healthy diet, but go to a work buffet and there's loads of tasty pastries and you can't help but pick one up and eat it. And we know that the balance of your impulsive reaction to these food cues and your self-control kind of balance to determine your eating behaviour. And both of these are quite highly determined by your genes. So quite a lot of the research in our group looks at the genetic basis for some of these mechanisms that drive eating. And we also do some functional and structural MRI research to look at how these processes are mediated by the brain as well. And so this helps us really understand that some of these processes are not really up for conscious control. So they're quite highly genetically determined, and you can detect changes in the brain in response to food cues before you're consciously aware of them, or they don't correlate with subjective ratings of desire to eat, for example, but they do predict how much you're going to eat. So what we try to do in our lab is create novel computerised tasks that actually train people to change how they respond to food cues. So rather than seeing a very tempting, rewarding food and having a very strong go response to pick it up and consume it, we try to switch the balance so that the dominant response to that cue, if you want it to be, could become a stop, inhibition, avoidance response. And the way we do that is through these simple computerized tasks. So we have versions that people can play online on a computer keyboard, and we have versions that you can play on your smartphone as well as an app. And if you want to have a go, there's the address at the bottom of that screen. The app is available in Google Play and Apple stores. And people can choose which foods or drinks. So alcohol, of course, is a stimulus that a lot of us struggle to resist. People can choose the categories of food or drink they want to train themselves to resist. They can even upload their own pictures now into the game to make it completely tailored to themselves. So the way the game works is that pictures just flash up once at a time on the screen quite rapidly. And if they're surrounded by either a bold frame or a red circle frame, then you have to sit very still and try not to move. But if a picture is surrounded by a thin frame or a green circle, then you have to hit it or touch a key as quickly as you can. And by playing this game for just a few minutes every day, it conditions your brain to kind of associate healthy foods like fruits and vegetables with a rapid motor activation response, and you go for them. And foods that you might be trying to eat less of become associated with inhibition. And this actually makes these foods less liked and easier to resist. So I'm just going to show you what the game looks like, just to give you a few trials. So things would appear on the left or right. There you'd have to stop, there you'd have to press, there you'd have to stop, press, and so on. So you can see it's a pretty simple game, but it does actually work, strangely. So we did a trial in a community sample of middle-aged, overweight and obese adults, and they actually lost weight. So we subjectively measured their weight, and they lost weight and ate about 220 calories less a day after playing this game for a week. We've also found it can help reduce meat intake in those trying to reduce their meat intake. So this is all compared to a control game where people are inhibiting to, say, stationery or gardening tools rather than the foods. It's also been found to help primary school kids make healthier snack choices after playing the game once. And we've done some pilot trials in people with binge eating and bulimia eating disorders, and found it can reduce eating disorder symptoms and how much binge foods are liked. And so just to finish up, what we're working on at the moment is really trying to boost the effects of this training. So I mentioned about the training that helps people reduce their meat intake. We also know that people that avoid meat, such as vegetarians, tend to find it disgusting. So we've integrated disgust stimuli. So you can see that rather attractive photo of a toilet there. These can become the no-go signal. So you have to respond left or right where the picture appears on the screen, except when you see a disgusting image. And by pairing that disgusting image with a stimulus that you're trying to avoid, so it could be meat, it could be alcohol. We've actually done it for meat, alcohol, and vapes, and it works for all of them. You learn to inhibit to those foods, but you also kind of develop more of a disgust response to them. And people that are trying to change their behaviour and struggling are kind of fine with this. Like we've collected acceptability data, and people are kind of up for this if it works. So whereas the foods that we're trying to encourage people to eat more of, or that you might be trying to eat more of, are associated with nice, cute pictures, such as nice animal pictures, and you have to press those as quickly as possible. And that's it.